Rising above the Bay of Naples is one of the world's most famous volcanoes, Mount Vesuvius. Almost 2,000 years ago, its eruption buried Pompeii and devastated nearby Herculaneum, bringing everyday life to a sudden end. Today, we're walking through both ancient towns to discover what survived and the human stories the eruption left behind.
Welcome to Pompeii. We just arrived here moments ago and we're very excited to explore this complex of ruins. And not just Pompeii, but after this we're going to a second really interesting site that we haven't really seen that much online about.
Yeah, so we took the train from Naples and it was packed. The train comes, I think, once every 45 minutes. If you come here during summer, make sure to get some fans or something because it gets quite stuffy in the trains.
So getting the tickets for the train has to be factored in terms of time because that actually took way longer than we thought it would.
So we bought our tickets to Pompeii online and I highly advise you do the same because the queue moves really, really quickly if you have the ticket already bought.
For a bit of context, Pompeii is located about 45 minutes away from Naples. And this used to be a small seaside town that used to be sort of like a really cool area back in the Roman times.
And rich.
Exactly. There were a lot of summer villas here. A lot of the Roman elite would have summer houses in this area. Also, Naples was still a big town back then, so many of the people there would come here over the summer and just, hang out, I guess. This beautiful old Roman town was buried under the ashes of Mount Vesuvius eruption. We are now exactly 9 kilometers away from where Vesuvius is, and it completely destroyed everything. As the eruption happened, life basically froze over here. Many people ended up dying. It is believed that out of the 15,000 people of the population of Pompeii, many got to escape in the months before the eruption because there were warning signs, there were different earthquakes and so on. But many people died, as we'll see later on.
Yeah, and people didn't quite have the concept of a volcanic eruption back then, so they were taken by surprise. The Basilica was one of Pompeii's most important public buildings, serving as the city's law court, as well as a busy place for business and public meetings. Its enormous columns divided the interior into a central hall and surrounding aisles, while also supporting the roof that once covered the building. At the far end stood the raised tribunal, framed by tall columns, where Pompeii's magistrates presided over legal proceedings. So we are in the Roman Forum now and we have Mount Vesuvius in the background, and this was intentionally built so that Mount Vesuvius would be straight in the background. This was the Forum, the very heart of ancient Pompeii, where politics, religion, commerce, and everyday public life all came together. The enormous rectangular square formed the center of the city, surrounded by some of Pompeii's most important public buildings and temples. Even some of the original Roman paving still survives beneath our feet as part of the very streets people walked almost 2,000 years ago. At the northern end of the Forum stood the Temple of Jupiter, Pompeii's most important temple, dedicated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, the three principal gods of the Roman state.
So to visit Pompeii, there's several ways to do it. We chose to stay in Napoli and then do a day trip from there. You can also do it if you're staying in Sorrento, for example. It's probably equally close. And while you are coming to Pompeii, it's important to know that this will take a bit more time than what you budget for. So that's one. Oh man, it's such a windy day today.
Yeah, it's windy. We wanted to go to Procida today, but it's really windy.
Together with Pompeii, it's great to tie at least one more other activity. Most people, when they come here, then they go to see Mount Vesuvius, they go all the way up to the summit, and they kind of get both the effect and the cause, I guess. But we chose to go after this to Herculaneum, which is another smaller town that was also covered in the same eruption.
In a different way, basically.
Yes. And that one is a bit closer to Naples, but choosing to do this, that, and Vesuvius in the same day is a monumental task where everything needs to be functioning by the minute, and you cannot afford any missteps. So for that, we chose to do the sensible thing, as we do here.
Yes, and end the evening back in Naples with some dinner. Just behind the forum were Pompeii's public baths, an important part of everyday Roman life with separate sections for men and women. Bathers moved through different rooms, including the warm tepidarium and the much hotter caldarium, ingeniously heated by hot air circulating beneath the floors and through the walls.
So this is an area that I didn't necessarily have on my radar coming here, but I was just reading about it. It's actually quite interesting. It's called the Portico of Concordia Augusta. And it's essentially, it was more or less like a market. There were all sorts of commercial activities happening here. But apparently, a large part of it was slave trading and slave transactions.
Oh.
And I was looking into who were the slaves back then, and were people from captured territories like Germanics, from French territories as well, North Africa, Greece, Judea, all kinds of territories like that. And also a lot of people were apparently still born in slavery. So indebted families, all sorts of social situations that one would end up being a slave and you would just be born a slave. And also pirates would bring people here that they trafficked off the seas, captured, kidnapped, and would just sell them here as slaves. Quite interesting, like you wouldn't think, look how nice it is, poppies and stuff, but like...
Yeah, the poppies are really nice.
So this was like a summer holiday destination,
but
with a back alley where they were doing slave trading. But I'm guessing this is obviously 100% normal for the time. I'm not saying, I'm not normalizing it, far from it. I'm just saying like, this would most likely happen in most towns back then, sadly.
We are now in the food market, so this is where shopping happened, this is where the produce, the meat, the fish was sold. And thanks to Mount Vesuvius, the soil here was very fertile, so they had a lot of...
high quality vegetables.
Yeah, olive oil, everything, wine. Now the Roman ruins are kind of colorless, they're bare, they're gray, but actually back in the day, the towns were very colorful, as you can see behind me. So they would have painted walls, and we'll see more of this in our next stop in Herculaneum.
Hey, look at me.
You're tall.
No, but like I'm on a pedestrian crossing.
Oh.
So back then, this was their pedestrian crossing. Because over here would be filth, rain, mud, all that stuff. And the carts would be able to go past this. So then to keep your feet fairly clean, the sidewalks are a little bit higher. And this was the pedestrian crossing.
And how would you bypass this with the cart?
The wheels were probably wide enough. Back then. Some, otherwise, should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it was designed that way, so I'm guessing it probably was that. We came to the drive-thru. This was the old Roman taverna behind us, with all those terracotta sort of... there would be a place where they would be able to store soups and fish and all kinds of other stuff that they wanted to keep warm after they cooked them.
Now I'm hungry.
And yeah, and the carts would pass here. They would serve them the food and they would move on. And also on the other side, you can see there's a well with fresh water.
They were so developed.
I know, it's quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So apparently they had obviously really good wine, really good olive oil in this area, very good fish, and they were very good with making stews and soups. Other than this, there was also more street food. So street food was quite widespread back then. It obviously, well, we're in Italy, so not everyone would cook at home all the time. So many people would just go out and
Very
get some
modern.
food. I know, quite impressive. I think especially if you're a bit higher class.
Yeah.
Haven't really had much food today, but we finally got to a bakery. But it's been closed for almost 2,000 years now, sadly. Yeah, I didn't workshop that one, that actually just came to me. Well, anyway, we are now inside the bakery. These are all millstones, and this is where they would make the flour, bake the bread. But apparently this bakery did not have a counter, so this was not a place where people would come to buy bread. It was just basically wholesale for the smaller bakeries around town. And it had 4 millstones made quite paradoxical and ironically out of lava stone. And also on the other part of it there were stables for the animals that were used to create the flour basically. So it's interesting that you can actually see what the social and wealth inequalities were back then, because now we got to a boulevard. This is a wider street. You can see there's multiple rocks that you need to cross over to get on the other side. But on the smaller streets, you had tiny houses for poorer people. And now over here, you have these big ones, which had kitchen, living room, bedrooms. And most of them actually had the second story as well here. It feels like a museum. It feels like an archaeological site, but also like this was an actual town. So we are in Casa di Sirico. This was a wealthy businessman's house back then. A merchant, and it's very beautiful. You see the sort of inner courtyard with the olive trees over here and leander.
So it goes to show that no matter of your social status, here, for example, people died anyway in the same way.
Yeah, the exact same
Yeah,
way,
so
at the same time.
it's humbling, yeah.
We are on the side of Temple of Isis, an Egyptian goddess. And this was an active temple in the year 79 when Pompeii got buried. So it just goes to show how different cultures, different religions existed here. And they traveled across the Mediterranean from all the conquests that the Roman did back then. Very, very well preserved. It's one of the better preserved ones. And we're just going to go around the corner now to see a theater and I think the gym, if I'm not wrong. Over there we have the Palestra Sannitica, which was a youth club, a gym, a place where young men would come to exercise. And this is something that was set up long before the Roman times by some of the original Italic tribes and the Greeks. So we have to remember that Pompeii, before it was Roman, it was Greek. And it was sort of set up about 600, 700 years before it actually got buried. And the concept of men training to build a more healthy body and so on. That was a Greek concept. So this was the place where men would come to train.
I mean, they would train for wars and stuff, right?
Yeah, just like to be healthier and like fit, basically. They would do all sorts of wrestling and very early primitive weightlifting.
Wow.
And running and all kinds of different physical exercises. And this is set right next to a Greek theater right there, where we're gonna go right now and just have a quick look before we head on to the grand finale of Pompeii, the big amphitheater.
Windy.
Code yellow for wind.
I told you.
Well,
Imagine.
better here than on the seas.
Yeah, imagine going on the sea now.
The sea was angry that day, my friends. Like an old man trying to return soup from a deli.
So behind me is Teatro Grande. This is right next to the gym. And similar to the gym, it was built before the Roman times. So it dates pre-Roman times. And it was able to sit around 5,000 people. And it's very well preserved.
Well, apparently they still do some stuff on it.
Yeah,
Every now and then you can.
Yeah, there's a few tents here.
Yeah, they have some events now and again. So 5,000 people. For context, Pompeii used to have about 15,000 people. So a very big chunk of the population used to be able to come here at the same time. So that was the theater over there. Then you have the Odeon, which is sort of like for smaller things, poetry readings and so on, like a smaller event place. And this is called the Quadro Porticus. As you can see, it's a lot larger. This is the social spot. So after plays, everybody would basically come here and have fun. That was where the art happened, and this is where the drinking used to happen, more or less.
That makes sense.
We're off to the amphitheater. The big difference between a theater back in the day and an amphitheater is that this was genuinely just for the arts. Plays, all kinds of like comedies, tragedies, that kind of thing, and poetry. Whereas the amphitheater was where the more gruesome things would happen. Fights, gladiators, not only, but...
Very typical to Roman times.
Exactly. You wouldn't see gladiator fights in a theater, for example.
No,
unless they would get drunk.
It's very frowned upon. Those happen.
You were not allowed. There's a time and a place.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the eruption that covered Pompeii is that it actually didn't just happen. It took hours and hours and hours and hours for lava to travel for so long, through 7 or 9 kilometers. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, but I think the cause of death was by suffocation with the dust from the lava eruption.
People had a lot of warning signs. There were a lot of ash that fell. There were a lot of earthquakes, and many people managed to flee in that time. But I was trying to find a disparity between poor people and wealthy people that fled, because my theory was, if you were wealthy, you were more likely to stay here and hold on to your wealth, your houses, your whatever, your belongings, than if you were poor, which for me, in my head. But actually, turns out that many of the wealthy people obviously had connections, had servants helping them pack, had different villas in different other places where they were able to go, had means of transportation, they had horses.
Okay, so what I said earlier does not apply then?
Well, it apparently does, because many wealthy people who had big houses, they thought, oh, my house is big.
Oh, yeah.
I will withstand this, don't worry about it. So they just went to the higher floors.
Yeah, because again, the concept of an eruption was new to them.
And many of the poor people just died on the streets or in very, low houses, in very, obviously, poor conditions.
Yeah.
So there was not necessarily a big disparity between the two. Okay, so one piece of advice that we can definitely give you is do not underestimate Pompeii. It is larger, it's warmer than you would think. It takes a long time to actually go through it all, if you want to see it all. But you probably do, because the amphitheater is right at the other end. So even if you don't stop along the way everywhere, it'll still take a long time to get there. So there's a lot of walking involved. The steps are very uneven, the stones are, they're old. So
a bit slippery, yeah.
Yeah, look at this. There's still the markings of the wheels of the carts. It is fascinating.
Perhaps the most haunting reminder of what happened here are the casts of Pompeii's victims preserved in the very position in which they died almost 2,000 years ago. As their bodies decomposed beneath layers of volcanic ash, they left hollow spaces behind, which archaeologists later filled with plaster, revealing their final moments with extraordinary and heartbreaking detail. More than the ruins or the temples, these figures make it impossible to forget that Pompeii was not just an ancient city. It was a home to thousands of people whose lives ended here in a matter of hours.
Okay, we walked through the exhibition that showed the most casts of victims. Quite,
Eerie.
yeah, it's, I don't know,
Sad.
sad. And it's real, you know, you're not just walking through a museum. It's actual real people that, I don't know, there was a story, for example, there were a few victims and the story was that there were 10 people found in the house, in different parts of the house. And they were able to track their steps before they ended up dying, and it said that they were trying to run through the front door and something collapsed in front of them, so they ran upstairs, they got out through the window. They were holding roof tiles above their heads so they don't get hit by different debris and so on. And
I saw a mom holding her baby higher up so the ash wouldn't cover the baby, so she was kind of trying to save him. And also a lot of them had their hands on their mouths because they were suffocating.
It's a beautiful place to come. It's just nice to learn about these things sometimes. We are in the Amphitheatre, the biggest venue here where all the really big events would take place. It's one of the best preserved, apparently, Roman amphitheaters in the world. It's one of the few ones you can actually walk on the...
inside of. The amphitheater was Pompeii's great entertainment arena where more than 20,000 spectators could gather to watch gladiatorial fights, wild animal hunts, and even the punishment or execution of condemned people. Things could get seriously heated. In 59 AD, a rivalry between spectators from Pompeii and a nearby town erupted into a deadly riot, causing Rome to ban games here for years. Before entering the archaeological park at Herculaneum, we stopped for a well-earned lunch and ended up having some delicious large bruschettas. We also tried the local wine made from grapes grown on the volcanic slopes of Mount Vesuvius. After all the walking, it was the perfect chance to slow down and recharge for a bit.
We are back in business. We took about an hour break to sit down and have some food. The food was actually really good.
Yeah, and we had the Vesuvius wine.
So we did experience Vesuvius today, but actually
in
a better way. So yeah, if you don't get to go to Vesuvius, at least have a glass of wine from Vesuvius. That's the moral of the story. The place we sat down was literally a minute away from the entrance into the archaeological park here at Herculaneum. Pompeii was 20 euros per person. This is 16 euros per person, but this is in size 11 times smaller than Pompeii. Yes. You get more bang for your buck in Pompeii, but this is closer to Napoli. This is something you can do in like 3 hours if you are staying in Napoli and you don't feel like doing a whole trip to Pompeii.
Yes, and there's much fewer crowds here.
There's almost nobody here, at least from here.
Yeah.
So as you enter, you have this view on your right, which is essentially the archaeological park. So you do get some spoilers. You don't get to see inside some of the buildings, but yeah, at least you see this. We've been walking for about 10 minutes through the site here in Herculaneum. So this town was about 3 times smaller than Pompeii in terms of population. It's much better preserved. Apparently, because it was closer to Vesuvius, the way the lava exploded, it got covered sooner in the eruption. So this town, as you can see, still has many of the buildings with a second story that is still in one piece. It has a lot of the wooden structures in one piece. Apparently, because it got covered so quickly, the wood just didn't get to rot ever. So
yeah, it got preserved. So the main cause of death here was because of the lava flow.
Yeah.
And in Pompeii, it was because of the ash that suffocated the people who lived there. So it's 2 different death causes.
It's also really cool to see here so much more of the frescoes and wall paintings and all of these things that have been preserved. The belief was always that more people proportionally died in Herculaneum compared to Pompeii, just because it was a bit closer and the eruption was very violent here. But actually, they could only find about 500 corpses here out of about 5,000 population, which means that most of the people were able to get away. And also means that the town was buried at about 5 to 8 story height building under the lava. Well, not just lava, a whole bunch of materials, but that's why it got preserved so well, because it was buried very, very deep. There was no air in there left, it couldn't rot. So then when they excavated, they were able to quickly resurface everything.
These are basically boat houses, so when the lava flow came, people tried to escape via sea. I'm imagining the sea was right here because of the magma. Now it's basically solid, but the sea was much closer back then. So they tried to escape and yeah, they couldn't. And that's why you can see basically skeletons when compared to Pompeii. You could see casts, yeah, because they were covered in ash. So it's different.
Well, not only do we see magma here, but like, look at this wall behind us. And this was probably the sea back then.
Yeah, crazy.
Quite fascinating.
Yeah. So the same thing happened in Campania when the Etna erupted. Basically, the terrain got elongated and the sea got pushed back a bit. Yeah.
I think about half a mile actually, so quite a lot. Yes, so Herculaneum, fascinating, way smaller. This is a few-hour day trip from Napoli. You can still get on with your day in Naples if you don't feel like allocating a whole day to what the Vesuvius actually did in the area.
Yeah, it's way less intense, fewer people. It's closer to Naples, so yeah, if you prefer something short, maybe come here. What you doing?
Lunges.
Oh, you gotta do them somewhere.
So that is a preserved wooden door from the Roman times. The only one that exists here. There's 2 things that are very well preserved in Herculaneum. There's that. And apparently there's a library somewhere with some scrolls that have been preserved very well. And they're still trying to decipher some of them. And apparently with new AI technologies that is becoming more and more possible. Hey, they were small, weren't they?
Yeah, I think they were kind of tiny.
We'll be walking out towards the exit. It's, just a few streets. Herculaneum was like a tiny neighborhood of Pompeii, basically. It doesn't have an amphitheater, it doesn't have any of the big buildings. It does have a couple of tavernas where they served street food.
Yes,
Sadly
not anymore.
Exactly, well, not anymore, sadly. That would be very good, actually. Apparently, they used to make focaccia there. They didn't make pizza, but they made focaccia. However, they do have one really cool thing. The exit.
Yes.
We couldn't not include in this vlog, although it doesn't really have anything to do with Pompeii or Herculaneum, a really nice traditional Neapolitan dinner in Napoli. We are in Osteria Napoleon and we are getting traditional food. I'm going to share a Parmigiana melanzane, eggplant Parmigiana. I'm getting some traditional pasta. Laura is getting some grilled fish. She wants to keep it light for tonight. I want to go crazy. And we're going to get some local wine as well. The music is quite loud in here, so I'm not sure how much we'll be able to talk, but we got a tiny window, so here I am.
All right, well, dinner was lovely.
Yeah, food was delicious.
And Osteria Napoleoni with a U, Napoleoni. 10 out of 10 recommendation. The staff, super nice, super kind.
Yeah.
Price is absolutely unbeatable.
Simple food and yet super delicious.
My portion of pasta, I'm not even joking, was basically double sized to a normal portion of pasta would be. And it was €9.
And the wine pours were very, very generous.
Yes, it was half a bottle per glass.
Now we gotta climb 2,000 stairs to get to the supermarket, and hopefully we'll survive.
Yeah, we need some coffee for tomorrow morning. We're going on another adventure.
Yes.
We are going on a nearby island for our next vlog, so make sure you come back for that. But until then, thank you so much for watching this video. We really enjoyed touring a bit more the historic part of this area that gives a bit of context to Naples, to the surrounding areas. But from now on, it is back to our normal type of videos. So thank you again for watching the video. Make sure you like it, you subscribe to the channel, and we'll definitely see you in the next one in
In Procida.